recording here, and I got us open on my phone here, so it looks like we're good to go.
All right. Well, what fun stuff are we getting into this week, Mr. Coy?
Well, we could get into all kinds of fun stuff. Why don't you give us first? You just had a little adventure down in Miami town for 10X Growth Con with Mr. GC. So give us some quick highlights, some standout moments for you personally and, as a whole that you feel like were most impactful for the group, for the tribe, for the community, for the peeps.
I had a feeling that was where you were going to go. So I have some notes. But I have to tell you, I don't know if you know this about me, but I tried out for The Apprentice 2 times when it was on the air.
Cool.
And one of the big excitement things about being in Pueblo the last time was the producer of Undercover Billionaire or direct, whatever. He also had done some of the seasons of The Apprentice. So when Grant brought out the first guest at the Growth Con, and it was Donald Trump, one of my icons in the business community, I was a bit excited, let's say.
Nice.
So to have 2 of my favorite business people in the whole world on the same stage, it was pretty good. And it didn't get, it wasn't about the politics. It was more about business and things like that. So that was my favorite. But I'll tell you, I sat there and I was probably crying about half the time because I was just so grateful to be in a room with these guys. Like that was pretty fun.
Right on.
And then there was this man, his name is Jay. There was T Jakes. He's
TD Jakes.
Yeah, you know who
the
that
preacher
is.
Man.
Yeah.
I know who TD is.
I have a feeling more people know about him than I do, but
was he a terrific dude?
Oh my God. He was
no
probably,
pun intended. Well, a little bit.
I don't understand.
Initials TD, terrific dude.
Oh,
come on, Bobbie, get some coffee in you.
I know. Cheers. I'm trying. Yeah, he was pretty spectacular as a speaker, as a motivator. I don't know that I've ever been somewhere where standing ovations were in the middle of someone's talk.
No kidding, huh?
That's pretty impressive. One of the cute takeaways I got, do not confuse busyness with business. So for all of those out there that think that having a big task list but aren't moving towards income or servicing their client, not so good. That
Preach.
Yeah.
Raise the roof right there.
If I can see the invisible, I can do the impossible.
Mm-hmm.
That was another one of his quotes. So for me, that was one of the things I needed to hear because I have my vision, which is invisible. So evidently I'm supposed to get it done, which is what feels like the impossible on some days.
Wow. That's powerful. Goes back to an old proverbial statement that says, without vision, people perish.
Really?
Straight out of that book, I'm sure Mr. TD talked about a few times throughout the course of his speech there. But yeah, absolutely. We have to have vision inside of us. If we don't, we're dying. I mean, how profound a statement is that, Bobbie? If we don't have vision, we're actually living a slow death. And we could encompass purpose around that. We could encompass destiny, whatever words you want to do. But, we talk about certain people being visionaries, right? We can look back throughout history and say, these successful entrepreneurs, they had the vision, right? But they surrounded themselves with more intelligent people, right? For implementation, which is true. But at the same time, I don't think that exempts the rest of humanity. I think every one of us is called to have a vision, a purpose for our lives. And if we don't, we're spinning the wheel. I mean, let's get straight up raw here. My personality, right? Bob, you can relate, being it's just funny. I use my kids for an example, right? I've got a toddler who's almost 5 years old, and little guy Axel, who's a little over a year, right? And just the differences in their personalities, and watching them and seeing where is their personality similar to mine, right? And Axel, my son, right, has definitely got that, anything goes adventurous spirit that I grew up with. I grew up in the Wild West, right? I grew up in Wyoming. My dad, when my brother and I were very little, would drag us out sub-zero temperatures to go hunting. Things that I didn't carry onto my life, right? I don't enjoy that. But things like fishing, I love it. I love being outdoors. I love being in the isolation where no one else is, and just being able to sit there and still and quiet myself. And so I see that little guy has that adventurous spirit as well, right? And I recognize seasons in my life where, let's just put it this way, it was very mundane. And sometimes that just means, global circumstances have you trapped inside your house for lengthy periods of time or whatever, because it's winter, not because of that for me.
Okay.
Because it's winter, and I don't care for the cold. I grew up in it, but I just realize if I'm not cultivating that aspect of my DNA, that there's a death inside of me. There's a lack of fulfillment. And so you see it's so much more than just a hobby or an extracurricular activity. It's really a part of who I am. I have an adventurous spirit. It's part of my DNA to be a pioneer, to be a forerunner, to take risks, even at my own detriment. And at times the detriment of those who are close to me. Now it's a little different now, right? Being a family guy, you have to assess the level of risk you want to take, right? Versus, if I was a single guy out there today, it'd still be no holds barred, but it's different. And so, Bobbie, if I'm not like cultivating that in some way or fashion, there's a death inside, or we go through something in our life that, I don't want to say distracts, but I want to say use the word diverts us from an intentional, purpose-driven path that we're on. And sometimes we get into this place where we start to wallow in the muck and the mire, if you will. And so in that muck and that mire, there's stagnation, right? There's doubt. There's the questioning of who you are and what your purpose is. And so I find for me, right, that in that place, we can go back to whatever phrase you want to use, idleness being the devil's workshop, right? As human beings, I just tell you right now, we're not created to be idle creatures. We are not supposed to be sitting around doing nothing. We are supposed to be constantly moving, creating momentum, whether that's a little bit or a lot, it doesn't matter. And so for me, I found in that place, my thoughts were susceptible. I felt more susceptible to external temptations, if you will, things that were not in my best interest for my health or well-being. And it took me a long time to recognize that, right? And then to consciously say, okay, I have to get out of this place willfully, meaning as much as we want to say we don't have control over external circumstances, and this is true in a lot of ways, we do have control up here, right? We do have control to what thoughts we're allowing, what thoughts we're rejecting, and we don't have to stay in that mental place. And so it felt good, right? Because again, when you're busy, when you're in action, when you're building, creating, and momentum, let's just be real, Bobbie, you don't have a lot of extra time to cater to distractions. Would you say that's true?
Oh my goodness.
You don't have a lot of time on your hands, right? You're not looking for trouble.
That's so very true. Oh, you just remind me of a third thing. I'm taking notes because that monologue was pretty, you hit a couple things that were important to me, but I remember my brother's gone to prison and we have the same parents. So you would think that we'd have the same values or whatever, if it was just that simple. And the night that he got arrested, that he had gotten in trouble that led him going to prison, he had a shift at work and he didn't show up for shift because he was off in this, bad environment. So I love, because I wrote down the responsibility and control piece you spoke to.
Hmm.
In this case, if he had taken the initiative to go to work, right, he wouldn't have been in the trouble.
Wow.
And I always thought that about that situation, because I drank, I drugged, I did the things, but I always went to work. I don't know why, but it saved me. I know it saved me.
Hmm.
So I always compared it in that situation. So I love that you called that out. And then this whole taking responsibility for our own stuff and control for our own stuff. I just gotta hang out there for a minute. Uh,
Yeah,
no
ride
matter,
that wave.
yeah. So it's something that Grant has taught us. Like, it's a huge, big part of how we're taught in his world. But what's interesting to me is outside of that world, like I'm taking an intuition class with this man, William Whitecloud. He's from South Africa and the UK, and total opposite of Grant, right? And he's teaching us about the whole taking responsibility, and everything in our life is a choice.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter what language it's said. And I screwed up last year. That's why I'm struggling to get my momentum back, because I chose to live in victimhood
Mm,
and
mm,
not
mm.
take responsibility for everything that was going on around me, in the sense of, could have, instead of crying or whatever, I could have been working, or I didn't have to own everybody else's actions and feelings and behaviors and all the, there was bad shit that happened last year, but I still could have handled my part differently so that I wouldn't end up where I ended up. So it's really
And we
important.
talked about that a little in our last conversation, because I went through that too, didn't I, Bobbie?
Yeah,
And I talked about how I, dwindled there. And in our minds, right, we try and justify it. And let's be real, guys. Again, you hear the craving and the desire, and it's been that way for years now, the whole, entrepreneurialism, entrepreneur, how cool it is, how catchy, how trendy. But the reality is, when you have the ability to create your own schedule and own your own time, that's a huge freaking responsibility. And if you're a guy like me, I don't know about all you other, uber focused people who just are so perfect at allocating every moment of every hour of the day. But for me, like, that's no easy task, because I get distracted, right? I'm the creative. I can easily get my attention diverted and just say, oh, I've got the time. I can do that later. And you start doing that shizzle, and eventually you're going in 80 different directions, like you brought up earlier, Bobbie, and you're not owning the fact that you're not really creating something that's building revenue, generating something. It's just that, what did you call it? The busyness, right? The busyness of being busy.
exactly. Yeah. And the purpose vision part of what you were talking about, I never thought of, I think about it all the time in entrepreneur land, right? Because my vision, the reason I became an entrepreneur was because I got the vision. So that was a very clear thing for me, and it revolves around my recovery. But when you're talking about it for the normal person, right? We're on LinkedIn, so we're going to probably see a lot more working people. I guess that would be a better language than entrepreneurs, although entrepreneurs live here. But when I was at the grocery store, I always wanted to move forward, right? Have a better position, a better title. And it wasn't about income, believe it or not. It was actually about, I thought that if I was the vice president instead of the fields person, I can influence the decisions that helped my floral managers better, the customers, like I can meet the needs of the calling. But you can't do that as a floral manager. You can't change the world in a chain. You can impact who you train and whatever. But it wasn't really until this conversation that I realized I even had purpose in that role, which is interesting. So I would invite anybody who's listening to this to think about, what is their purpose or vision. It may be there and they didn't even know it was there. So it's very motivating.
It is, Bobbie. That's really good. And I'm probably going to offend somebody right here and now, but my religious upbringing, right, when I came out of my near death experience and, nearly lost my life to a drug overdose, my direction at the time, my desire was to serve, but it was to do so through, faith-based ministerial type of background. And, the way that ministry is perceived and sadly done in a lot of ways is that, okay, you're now working for the boss man. You're working for Mr. God. So Mr. God is going to meet all your needs, and you're just supposed to pray and, read your Bible and serve others. Okay. Trust God. Now, again, I'm not negating any elements of faith, because I'm thankful for everything that I learned in that journey to have faith, right? To trust a higher power greater than myself. But I also saw the abuse that says, oh, I'm in ministry, or, oh, I'm a Christian, so you need to pay my bills because I have an outreach. So I'm going to set up a GoFundMe account, or, you just need to give me donations. Is it wrong per se? No. Is it abused? All the freaking time. And so for me, it was just like, you know what? It just never sat well with me, Bobbie. It never agreed with me. So for me, it was, okay, this is my full-time gig, if you will, right? This is my 9 to 5. However, I don't want to be dependent on other people. Okay. I have the ability. God's given me the ability. Now, did I have any formal training, to work anything specific other than, what I'd done in my early years, which was, landscaping, construction, hotel business for a while? No. But did I have a brain up here? Yes. So I created side hustles, right? I had side businesses going on to supplement my income. And so I think a lot of the times, right, when we're looking at this entrepreneurial journey, or we're looking to make a transition, it's like, oh, you got to go all in, right? You got to go all in. You got to quit your job and just, whatever, create your digital course, write your digital book, and just sell the crap out of it. But that's not always reality. And so I'm grateful that I took responsibility, right, for me, and said, you know what, I'm not gonna throw this off to other people. Now, do we all go through stuff in life where we need some help, right? Yes, but do we stay there? Are we going to live dependent upon others? No, because ultimately what an entrepreneur is doing is creating a self-sustaining environment, right? Creating personal independence for us so that we can help create independence for others. And by the way, since we're here, and if you're watching the replay later or whatever, that opportunity is there. I'm part of a great organization, creating an agency. Like, we have openings right now in the financial industry. You can be a part of my team. You can be a part of an amazing team. You can do it as a side hustle and sell one of the most needed products on the planet, i.e. life insurance. Or if you love it and you love serving people and you see how much of an opportunity is, you can make it your full-time gig, do an easy 6 figures in your first year. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm always hearing people making excuses, Bobbie, right? Economy's bad right now. Not saying it isn't, right? I lost my job. I just got a referral from a lady I knew through Facebook. Her friend had been a part of a industry for 25 years, lost her job out of the blue. For whatever reason, she said, I think you need to talk to Caleb. And so she connected us. She came from a service oriented industry, right? Doing loans, things like that. And dude, like, she is the perfect fit. And so now she has an opportunity, didn't have her insurance license. So apart from getting an insurance license, which isn't all that hard because, high school graduate here, no college. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And now she has an opportunity, right, to not only supplement her income, but essentially make a full-time gig or career out of it. So I just love that, right? That I can say that I can put that out there. If you're just looking for something as a side hustle, reach out to me and I can hook you up. So Bobbie, that being said, what do you think? What's your perception on, some of what I just shared as far as, I don't want to talk about what you shared with me before we got started, unless you want to go there about, your little transition, totally up to you. But that's a lot of the paradigm that I've seen. Like, people say it's got to be one or the other, but it doesn't always work that way. There is a transition to entrepreneurship, right? There is a what am I going to do to supplement my income while I'm building what's in my heart, while I'm building what's in my vision? What are your thoughts on that?
So before you asked me if I was up to sharing that, what I was thinking about with this candidate that you're talking about that just came on board with you, I think of job loss, like when people get laid off or things change, or even when people get divorced, I tend to say, congratulations. Because usually it's somebody or something pushing people to make the decisions that maybe they wouldn't have normally made, right? And that it opens doors. So I love that. And that's kind of what's happening with what I'm transitioning to. Everybody that knows me knows I love running around the country, driving, well, I guess the world too, since we did a little of that too. But travel is really important to me, and my personal development's hugely important to me. So through life and my journey, one of the people I had worked with out in Kansas City, she actually replaced me. We stay in touch. And this position within her world kind of opened up, and I was like, well, hey, I can't give up X, Y, and Z, right? Like these things are important to me. And had the conversation, and now I'm going to be helping them out in a 9-to-5 job role again, right? And there's a lot that comes with that, with what you just said. And most of it comes from ego, right? So I remember when I was quitting my job to go into this space, my walking buddy, I'd say to her, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like business is a set of mistakes. You fix the mistakes and then you just keep going, or it's problems to solve and you just keep going. And the absolute worst, I get a job. Like since I've been an entrepreneur, I've door dashed, I've worked in a deli, I just do whatever. And for whatever reason, like I found myself doing this because this all just happened in the last 24 hours, but the few people that I've told, I could feel myself not feeling enthusiastic as much as maybe a little bit of shame or disappointment, like going back to a job. Yeah. So thank you for bringing this up, because that's just my ego.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent, Bobbie, because this is exactly where I hoped we could go, because somebody needs to hear this today.
Yeah. And I'm trying to, and this is, part of the mindset work, right? And which, oh, by the way, has to happen every single freaking day. Unfortunately, it's the only way to keep going through the muck and to get to the other side and to live our purpose or vision. At least that's my perspective on it. So it's been very, because of course, everybody that I tell are cheerleaders, right? Like I called my walking buddy yesterday and telling mom, and everybody wants to be supportive, like, yay, you got a job. Now, some of it is because they still live in that place of fear. Not that they disbelieve that I'm capable, but they don't understand how to survive without a paycheck or an income like we're used to. So it's not their fault. That's from fear and habit and all of those things. But basically, everybody's been very enthusiastic and excited. But I can feel that there's something holding back my complete enthusiasm, because it's like, am I a failure because I didn't make it on the first round and I had to go back? And luckily I have people like those, or like you, or, I'm in a community where, no, it doesn't make me a failure. It's part of the process. And I have to, one of my biggest beliefs still is to talk to myself like I would talk to you, Caleb, or like I would talk to my best friend, right? If someone else was feeling some kind of way, I have to remember to have those voices in my head and treat myself with the same kindness and compassion that I would treat anyone else. And that's where the work comes in, because it's hard. It's easier to have the negative voices come in, right? That's why Bobbie-The Awesome has to be on the screen to remind me that it's not the negative voices. They don't get to win. That's right. Did I answer your question, sir?
You did. I mean, it's true. The real, raw, straight up truth is ego. And I experienced the same thing in ministry, faith-based community. It's just like, oh, well, you must not have enough faith, Caleb, right? Because you're not getting your needs met. I remember when, if I could say the name Parent of somebody, everybody would know, but I won't. Um, when I was, doing some of that stuff together with this person, and, setting up some events where this person said to me, Caleb, you just need to start doing honorariums, and you need to ask for money up front before you go anywhere. Because I personally, Bobbie, had determined in my heart that if I was in ministry and serving people for the right reasons, right, that money was not going to be my motivation. Now, did I not only fully understand my personal worth and value at that point in time? Sure, but that's not my point here. It was that I had made a conscious decision that I was not going to be bought, that I was not going to be motivated to do something, right, strictly because of that. And I'll never forget him saying that, because, and again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but to me, it was the perfect example of that. Much of ministry today is nothing more than business. It's just glorified business. And so there was a price that I paid, right? Suffering that I endured because I wouldn't compromise, because I said, I'm not going to do things that way. But again, it was a blow to the ego, right? Because we're talking about the mind battles, right? You're constantly going, okay, I don't have enough faith, right? And again, this is all I knew. This is what you're taught in that arena, right? And when you're not going to do things the way that other people do them, you're going to suffer. It's like with anything, right? You've got your inner circles, you got your little clique groups or whatever, and you're either in the in or you're in the out, right? And if you're not in agreement with what they're doing, oftentimes you're ostracized, right? You're on the outs there. So it was an extraordinary price to pay. It was painful to the ego, but it also made me realize, right, that to be an uncompromising individual, you're going to have to exercise, your ability to do things on your own, to get things done. And, entrepreneurship is no easy task, and neither is working a nine to five. Neither is the responsibility of being somewhere, someplace at the right time, right? And punching in and putting in the hours and allowing yourself to co-labor with other human beings that you may not agree with, that you may not get along with, that you may not even freaking like at all. And then there's that level of submission, right? Where we say, okay, I've got a boss, I've got somebody else I've got to answer to. And so I think there's so much lack of commendation that we need to be commending people more in that arena, instead of just saying, oh, once you come over into the entrepreneurial arena, right, and you don't have to answer to anybody, then you'll be a cool cat. No, not exactly. There's a discipline, there's a responsibility that's learned there, right? Tools that we can take, seasons of our life, right? Because we've all been there where things didn't work out as planned, and we had to improvise and go back to doing that. So I just want to say how freaking proud I am of you, Bobbie. And, again, that transparency, just like somebody needs to hear that today. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Caleb. Yeah, it's not the fun stuff that to talk about, for sure. You made more amazing points as always. It's interesting because my views have changed so much on how I was at a 9-to-5, or I call it a W-2 job, right, versus entrepreneurship. And one of the things I've noticed about myself, and maybe I'm going a completely different direction, but I can accept feedback a lot better as an entrepreneur than I could as an employee. As an employee, I always thought I knew better. Like, well, if you just did it my way, X, Y, Z. So I don't know if part of my journey has been, so I got that lesson. Again, lucky to have a lot of entrepreneur people in my life that could say and know and understand and can reflect back to me the things I can't see in this space. But it'll be interesting to see how those lessons apply when I do go back to W-2, right? Because I'm not going to be the boss. I'm going to be a boss, but not the boss.
Right.
And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a whole other set of gifts and skills that I get out of this, or implementation of what I learned. Maybe I'm going back so that I can practice using all the tools I've learned, and hiring, staffing, teaching, leading in a different way, so that when I do build 321, I now have this skill set and I know what it looks like to help, you know, the people in recovery, the people who are going to be working for me. So it's interesting on that journey. But I do have a question for you.
Sure. I was just going to say, I love that your perspective and frame of mind is there, right? That there's nothing negative about it, that it is a opportunity to learn and grow. So,
Well, that's everything. Now, I might not see it in the moment, even when I'm trying and I'm aware that I should be seeing it in the moment. Like I said, I didn't know I was playing victim last fall to the level I was in my own head. Everything is upon reflection, as long as I'm paying attention generally. And I totally lost where I was going. Oh, I want to know if you had to describe it. I mean, I have a sense of some of the things that you represent, but if someone asked, what's your purpose or what's your vision, Caleb, what would your answer be to that?
as long as you're not going to ask me how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop, because I can tell you affirmatively, the world may never know. Great question, Bobbie. Great question. You know, and again, with progressivism, if you will, or this self-awareness, self-education, personal growth journey that we're on, right? We're evolving, and over time, our vision and our purpose evolves, right? And I think I said it to, you know, my wife in the past few days, like, you know, it's hard at times to look in the mirror or pick up old book or old articles that I wrote in the past and go, who's this guy? Like, did I actually think that way? Did I actually believe that way? Because I have changed and transformed so much, right? So obviously, you know, over time, our vision, our purpose, as well as our identity. I don't think our identity should just be one thing, you know, that we figure out early in life. I think our identity transforms too over time. And so for me, at the root core, it is the same as what it was, you know, in those early years when I first set out in ministry. It was to love on and to empower and to serve humanity to be the best that they could be, right? That life is too short and too precious to not take advantage of it, right? And so really all those years of ministry, whether it was helping people with, you know, struggling with addiction or broken relationships, or, you know, kids from broken homes or things like that, it really was just a transition into the awareness of what kind of legacy am I building. And so, you know, it's why of all the titles, again, and you know me well enough to know I couldn't give a rip about titles, right? There's plenty of people that got bigger, better, badder titles than me and more credentials behind their name. But the one that, you know, that I associate with the most in the midst of all that I'm doing is legacy hero consultant, you know, and essentially that's helping people to become heroes of their legacy. And obviously a big part of that is the financial legacy, you know, protecting families from probate, utilizing estate planning tools and living trusts. And then from there, you know, how are we building a long-term legacy so that we have what we need when we retire, you know, so that means life insurance, annuities, investment products, things like that. But at the core, Bobbie, you know, ultimately it's how are we going to be remembered when we're gone, right? Because great, you know, I'll become a billionaire one day, and, you know, I leave all this money to my kids and my grandkids. But if I was a dick, excuse my French, if I was a prick, you know, and always treated people like crap, treated my family like crap, right? Now, am I perfect? God, no. Do I know at my heart core that I'm a good person and I love my wife and I love my kids and I love people? Absolutely. Am I fed up with humanity's BS right now in a lot of ways? 100%. What'd you guys expect? This is the raw and real with Caleb and Bobbie right here. Okay. We're just talking real right now. But at my core, right, my heart is continue to help people build that legacy and say, who am I going to be remembered as when I'm gone? How is my spouse, my kids, my associates, the people that I did lives and podcasts with, how are they going to remember me? You know? And so I think bringing that awareness to people, right? That there is such a fear in humanity of the unknown, right? Of when is my time coming, right? When am I going to punch out from this life? And then, what happens after that, afterlife, all that kind of stuff. It just creates tremendous procrastination in people. And, being in an industry where there hasn't, they're starting to be here, now over the recent years, but prior to that, there wasn't a lot of accessible free education on how they can properly plan and prepare and do that. Um, it's just another reason why people go, I don't want to have to go pay an attorney to get this information. And I don't know if you and I talked about it or I posted about it. I think it was a post I did recently, but people that would come to my presentations many times would say, thank you, Caleb. We're just so grateful. We've been looking for this information for years. I mean, I remember when one of my clients who, he's 94 now, was 90 years old when he and his former daughter-in-law came to my presentation and said that to me, right? And I remember going to his home, as a follow-up and sitting down with him and getting him familiar with the software and the system of our estate planning platform. And, first thing he does is he whips out all these documents from a will that he had gone to an attorney to complete. And that attorney, charged him exorbitant hourly fees, and then basically said to him, well, there you go, Don. You or one of your beneficiaries will be back to see me soon enough. He almost like with a smirk on his face. Yeah, because if you only have a living will and your estate is large enough, meaning you own a home or just even a few things, if it's outside the state threshold limit, which typically if you own a home and a car, you're already over that, guaranteed that your estate's going to have to be probated. And so this disturbing individual called an attorney, right, knew he was taking advantage of people. His primary purpose was to make more money off of them, and essentially them losing 30 to 40% of their estate to probate and taxes. Guys, that's what you're looking at losing if you don't have a properly drafted living trust in place. And that is not worth it. And a number of my clients are those people, Bobbie, who would come and tell me, oh, I just had to go through probate with my mom or my dad or this family member. And until they experience that horrific, public, lengthy, drawn out process for themselves, they had no idea, right, what they were in for and how important it was to start protecting their family legacy through a living trust. And so it's so rewarding and so fulfilling. And it's been my journey, right, in a lot of different areas of life to be a voice for people who are being taken advantage of. And again, that was just another area that I saw a lot of abuse going on. And, from the whole ministry dynamic into the financial estate planning and people just getting taken advantage of left and right, especially the elderly, right? Not knowing. And again, it goes back to, we don't know what we don't know. So my job now, provide a lot of free education tools, resources. You can register at calebkidcoy.com. I'll put it in the chat here, /legacy, 30 seconds. I will send you an email with tons of information, full-length presentation, video documents on what you can do to protect your legacy, the steps to prepare. And everything in my life, Bobbie, has been, leads me back to thinking about that, the things that we're not prepared for, right? A near-death experience, a divorce, all of a sudden, right? The system, the court's telling you when you can or cannot see your own children. You're not prepared for that stuff. And so preparation is one of the greatest steps, one of the greatest tools that we have to combat procrastination, right? And so if we don't prepare, like anything, right? Our health, we want to get out of trouble, we got to prepare ahead of time. We got to take the steps to prevent, right? Prevention. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely prevention instead of reaction. But you know what has been going through my head? And I am so grateful that there's people like you out there. And I've been exposed to you to even know that this is a problem. Otherwise, I wouldn't know this was a problem. But as my simple brain is turned on, I think this is why I don't think about this way. And I'm hoping you can just clear this up in case there's folks with this view. Just the word estate. Estate is it makes me envision that I have to have a house and all of these things. So I don't feel like I would fall in the bucket to be your client, Caleb. Now, I understand a little more because you've told me a little more. So I know that's not the case. But can you speak to that? Because I am guessing all those normal, I keep using that word normal. I got to get that out of my vocabulary. All the folks that are coming to you after they go on the miserable journey, right? And that miserable journey, taking their 30 or 40%, that is a consistent message that I'm hearing in your space. I won't claim to know much about it, but I definitely hear that. And I know that you guys know the laws and how to help people protect what's theirs, I guess is the nicest way to say that. So how do we communicate to the Bobbies of the world that don't understand? It's just estate. I'm thinking of the big hedges and marble, like estate. That word is screwing you guys and screwing the people.
I love it, Bobbie. And you nailed it, because it's this false paradigm dynamic, right? And this goes back to, okay, only wealthy people or, upper class people need a trust or a good estate plan. And essentially, again, if you own anything, that is your estate, right? So essentially everybody has some kind of estate. And I'm so glad you asked this, because it's such a passion of mine to find a way to break down this false paradigm, to essentially shatter this errant thinking, right? And a part of it is, I think that there's just such an aura of intimidation around estate planning. You hear the word living trust, and I think why the main reason the intimidation is there is because of legal aspects, of the aspects of law. And so one of the things that we recognize in, all these years and seeing so many people get taken advantage of by attorneys is that we want people to feel comfortable in this process. So we embed our estate planning attorneys into that process, meaning their fee is included in the fee to set up your living trust portfolio. So you don't have to worry about exorbitant additional fees, hourly fees, where you're going back and asking them questions. We've been able to compile everything into a space and a digital platform that gives clients 24/7 access through a secure client console, so that they are in the driver's seat. They are in control of their estate plan. And so, helping parents to understand, right, that there's certain aspects they haven't thought of. And you guys, you'll see all of these scenarios in my Hero's Legacy Process presentation on wills, trusts, and probate. I talk a lot about the pushed in the pool life scenarios, right? That we are not ready to get pushed in the pool. And I won't share that story again right now at the moment, right? But it's essentially a story about a man who gets pushed in the pool, and the pool's got a gator in it. And so, you are, when you're pushing a pool with a gator or a croc, you are fighting for your life, right? The quickest thing you're trying to do is, how do I get out of this pool? How do I get out of this situation? And so anytime a crisis occurs in our life, right, immediately we go into that, flight mode, survival mode, right? What do I do to get out of this uncomfortable situation? So just realizing that regardless of how much money you do or do not have, that, your simple possessions become your estate. And if you own just let's say you don't have much money in the bank account, but you do have a home, right? You do have a vehicle. There's a good chance that you are above that state threshold limit, which is different from state to state. You can just Google it. What's the estate threshold for Missouri or wherever you are, and you can find out what that is. So breaking that dynamic as a parent, saying, okay, if something happens to me or my spouse, right? What are the legal repercussions of guardianship? What does it mean? Oh, my parents really love me, so they put me on their bank account as signer of joint tenancy with right of survivorship. But nobody told them that if they go through a divorce, that the ex-spouse can potentially gain access to that bank account that belonged to the parents and the child and bleed them dry. Again, how many people you think thought of that, right? That parents just thought they're doing a good thing. Oh, I'm going to put my child on here. The couple's got a good relationship. They got a few kids at the time, and all of a sudden, they get pushed in the pool. There's right, whatever happens, infidelity, affair, they just don't get along. And one spouse makes an exodus and says, I'm out of here, runs off with the mistress. Life scenarios. Like, people aren't ready for that. And what happens to your kiddos, right? If you have not appointed a legal guardian, and, God forbid something, tragic happens, car accident or anything like that. So these are those scenarios that we often don't think about. And being in this industry and niche, if you will, it forces you to think about your mortality. It forces you to think about, tomorrow not being guaranteed. Am I prepared for, the unknown, for the unexpected? And what can I do? And so for the most part, Bobbie, we just realized that, people aren't talking about that. So it's not just a matter of, okay, here's a presentation. Okay, here's the difference between a will and a trust. And in a good living trust, the will is, already contained within the trust. And those advanced medical directives, healthcare power of attorney. One of the great attributes that we have in our portfolio is once you fill out those advanced medical directives, right? You talk about things, I do or do not want to be on life support. I do or do not want to be resuscitated. All those different scenarios. Here's my, medical physician. Here's my allergies. Here's the things that potentially could hurt me. Is once you have that filled out, you get a little printable medical card that you carry on your person, and that's got all that information. So if you do get into an accident, if something does happen to you, whoever's on the scene at that moment can utilize that medical card that you carry around in your purse or your wallet, and they can access all that information that could potentially save your life. And so, like, little things like that are just so profound in the way, that we can protect our own well-being and essentially insulate ourselves from creditors and predators. Because again, probate is a public process. It is open to anyone out there. They can see what's going on. That person who, maybe had a beef with one of those individuals in the past, or maybe it was a bad business deal that went sour and tens of thousands of dollars were lost. And the person said, we're friends. It is what it is. All of a sudden they read in the paper, you passed away. All the estate's being probated. And they go, you know what? I'm still pretty pissed about all those tens of thousands of dollars I lost from that guy. So all of a sudden they're there at the courts, or their attorney calls and says, your client owed me all this money. And so that attorney is basically got to take the time to fight off that person, which often is, it can't be proven or disproven without a lot of work. And the family's trying to grieve. They're trying to deal with funeral arrangements. They're trying to go through all this process. So oftentimes it's just easier for that attorney to say, well, if I give you 10 grand, will you go away? The guy says, 10 grand's a pretty good day. I'll take it. So avoid public contestation, avoid, everybody knowing about your business, because it's nobody's business. It's your family. It's what you've built. It's the things that you spend your life working so hard to protect, which if you put into a living trust, you're not going to lose 30 to 40%. 99% of that is going to be passed on quickly, seamlessly to your heirs and beneficiaries. You're going to avoid those legal fees. You're going to avoid those taxes, and you're going to be able to give your family what you work so hard to create. So I hope that helps. I know it was a lot of information there, but you got me in my vein here, and so I'm rolling with it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you expanding on all of that. It helped. It helped me. I learned a couple things from that as well. And it's funny because so often from the parents' perspective, like watching the parents, they're not, I'm going to take us down a different little road here, but they do try to protect their inheritance, for the children or whatever. And they almost stop living or spending on themselves to protect the inheritance. So I guess where my brain went was, well, what if they actually worked with someone like you, got it organized, and that 30-40% that they would have lost can now contribute to them having their dreams met, or to be able to play in life a little bit better. Like, that to me is what seems obvious.
I love it. I had to pop the heart up for that one, Bobbie, because again, that's 100%. And it brings up an excellent point that I talk about in my presentation, right? That people are living a lot longer. So they're outliving their retirement. They're outliving their savings. And like, I don't know. And no offense to Walmart or, any of these employers that are employing the elderly, but when I see, somebody who is in retirement and looking forward to, enjoying some life of, somewhat comfort, not working, and they have to go back and be a 75-year-old greeter at Walmart just to pay the bills and make ends meet, that bothers me. It bothers me a lot. Now, is it unavoidable at times? Maybe, but it doesn't have to be. And, I watched it with my own grandmother. I remember, visiting her in the retirement home, and, she didn't have much of anything. Cause I remember I was asking my mom about it recently too, why my grandpa, who was a World War II veteran, they didn't have a trust or anything, right, Mom? And yeah, well, didn't, grandpa being retired military have some type of pension or retirement? And so I just remember going to visit her because my grandpa had passed away a lot of years before. And it just hurting my heart to see her in this place in isolation. No more family lived in that town, in that area where she was. And like, I'm going, man, if somebody had helped her set up a trust, create a cash producing life insurance plan or annuity, she could be living wherever she wanted, in comfort, close to family, right? Doing instead, here she is isolated and alone, and her only comfort was eating. And she ate so much at, I think she was right around 90 when she passed, that it got to the point where she couldn't even get on an airplane to come visit us anymore. And so, it was strictly a matter of, we had to go out there, and I don't think she got a lot of family members and visitors. And, I think, of course, I had to forgive, but in my own heart, I'm thinking of my aunts and my uncles and my dad and going, why didn't you guys do more to prevent this situation? Like, you're all the grown-ups, right? And so those personal experiences, Bobbie, was just like so eye-opening, because I'm like, I don't want that to be my own mother. It doesn't have to be. And it was a battle to get my own dad to take the necessary steps to set up a trust, so much to the point that I'd almost given up. And it's just, again, there's those mindsets, those procrastinations, those fears, whatever it is that goes on with people not wanting to confront their own mortality, that they don't do that, or they put it off till tomorrow and say, I'll just take care of it later. And then all of a sudden, unexpected life happens. They're pushed in the pool and it's too late. I mean, I've gotten those calls too, Bobbie, with people that came to a presentation or watched my presentation, sent a message or said to me, I need to get this done. I need to get my trust set up. And then I get a call from one of the kids or somebody, and they're like, oh, I'm the son or daughter of so-and-so. They attended your presentation. Oh yeah. Well, they unexpectedly passed away. Can we
Mm.
set something up now and keep them out of probate? And the answer is no, I'm sorry. Now it's too late. And so again, I never like to use fear tactics with anyone, but this is where we're all guilty of. We don't do more, we don't take more steps in every area of life, right? Oftentimes because some type of fear is inhibiting us, or causing us to procrastinate. So if you're watching this today, that's my heart cry for you, that if this is speaking to you, that you do something about it, that you take action. um how different could the lives of children be if their parents set them up with a cash producing life insurance policy when they were 45, 50? Like, parents are doing it now, in their 30s or whatever. There's a lot more proactive people out there these days. But, I think of myself and my own brother, how could it have been different, right? What if these steps are taken? So again, we oftentimes go, well, that's an extra whatever amount it is per month, but we don't realize that we're building something. And it goes back to another old proverbial statement, that a good person leaves an inheritance to their children's children. And so legacy is that, are we thinking and planning for generations to come? God forbid if this world survives that long, and the way things are going, it's hard to question what it's going to look like too far in the future. But I'm going, what can I do in my power to, equip my kids, my grandkids, so that they're better prepared for the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. I almost wonder if you're crossing or seeing this gap when you said the people in their 30s are getting more proactive. And then we think about our grandparents. Like, my grandmother worked, the town that I'm staying in right now was an old, like, they made sneakers and rubber, like it was a rubber producing town. So because of these companies, or I think of Detroit and the car makers, right? So all these people had their pensions and their things. They might not have even thought about this. That's what just showed up for me, was you're like combating different like my 17-year-old niece has heard the word meditation. When I was 17, I didn't hear that. So I feel like there's all this evolution going on, contributing. Not that that changes anything. It was just an observation I had when you were talking.
Well, that's a good point, Bobbie. In addition to that is this technological revolution, right? When Gary, the founder of our estate planning platform, started doing this in 1985, near 37 years ago, there was no option but to find an estate attorney, right? To draft the documents and then, copy that stuff up, get it notarized by a legal notary, and then put it in snail mail. So, there weren't, even back in the 80s, right? You didn't have the options. And obviously, it's no different today. Most people are doing everything in their power to avoid attorneys. And, I remember not having any experience in the American judicial system when I, first went through my divorce, how intimidating that was. And now how different it is, right? Because I don't fear attorneys. I befriend attorneys, and I actually know a lot more than a lot of attorneys out there, especially when it comes to estate planning and international law. So, again, knowledge is very much empowering in that area. And if my wife decides, she's done with me and takes me to court, then I'll probably represent myself. I'm now that confident with my understanding of law. God forbid that never happens. But again, right, it's just, I'm not going to go into the whole law conversation, because this is, another 2 or 3 hour discussion. But, that lawyer, that attorney who you are paying to represent you, is actually bound by law to represent the court. Okay. So they are representing the court and the judge. And so that's why, things don't always go as planned. And when you understand what you're dealing with and you understand the system, when you know what you need to know in accordance with law, it's really, really empowering. So again, because of the digital revolution, Bobbie, it's so much easier, and we've made it so much more accessible for people to do what they need to do to protect their estate plan. And one of the new features that we've got, we just finally updated the website recently, and I've been talking to Gary about this for years. I said, dude, we need to get your wealth of knowledge, in estate planning out there to the world. And so right from that homepage there, a lot of the articles and information that he's written over the years are right there on the homepage. And it's just like, I love it, right? I mean, you're giving people information that, again, they were paying out the wazoo to get before. And now, they can educate themselves up front. They can plan, they can prepare. One of the features we have is, our try before you buy it gives you 72-hour access to our console and platform. So you can, go in there and see exactly what it is. And, I tend to do this for people anyway. And, we recorded videos. Actually, Gary and I did a walkthrough, just like if you were a new client. So you see exactly the process that you're going through. Because again, we don't want people feeling intimidated. We don't want them feeling like someone is in control of their estate. And that's what it's been in the past, right? Attorneys want to control it, or they want to see people go through probate, because a probate attorney is, that's where they make their money. And one of the main attorneys that's now on our platform that I work with was formerly a probate attorney. And so after years of probating people's and families' estates, she just didn't have the stomach for it anymore. And she found our platform and said, holy Toledo, Batman, this is a group of people that are rescuing people from probate. I want to be a part of that. How cool is that? A former probate attorney is now one of our estate planning attorneys. And so it goes without saying, that it's a ruthless and a brutal process that can be avoided. One of my slogans is, the only thing worse than the pain of procrastination is the agony of regret. And, once it's too late, it's too late. And we look at, cost up front or things like that, instead of the bigger long-term picture, and that's legacy, right? The investments that we're making now in ourselves, in our families, in our kids, in our finances, in our business are what are building that future legacy. So.
Thank you, Caleb. You went deep. I love it.
We did.
I do have a question, since we are, due to that technological stuff, we're everywhere. So can you help people in other countries? You mentioned international law, but if somebody from a different country, or even here in North America, I imagine it varies place to place. So can you help people everywhere?
Great question, Bobbie. And the answer is no, we cannot. The laws in the United States and the legal codification, we default to Nevada trust law, meaning that all of our documentation, which are automated based on the information that the client puts into the system, defaults to Nevada trust law, which has the most powerful trust protections in the country. They're the most proactive state when it comes to trust laws. And so unfortunately, it's something that I've talked about with other associates and advisors. Like, I would love to be able to translate what we have into Portuguese and utilize it in Brazil, where my wife's from, but it is a very huge task because the laws are all different there. So unfortunately, it doesn't even work for our Canadian pals. So we're strictly set to working with US citizens throughout the 50 states. But great question.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer, and that's okay. I just wanted some clarity. And then I want you to repeat that quote you said, because this is another place my brain went when you were talking. I hadn't really thought of, aside from the fact that I could be your client because I'm going to have a legacy and I'm going to be a billionaire someday, just like you. And I don't have kids, so mine's going to be interesting, right? Like where I put on my stuff. But the synergy that I thought was in that last quote that you said in our belief system. So can you say that again about procrastination and regret?
Sure. So the only thing worse than the pain of procrastination is the agony of regret.
So that's my whole message, right? Like that's part of everything I stand for is work, play, live. Like we should be playing, we should be roaming around the country, we should be going on retreats with people we don't know, we should be having conversations and live podcasts with people we've only met in person once or twice, you know. So I really love that because it captures it, and that would, I guess, be one of the things I want everybody to hear today from this conversation, as well as like, just live freaking life, people. What are you waiting for? Like,
Gosh.
don't have it be your kids calling Caleb. Like, just do it. Like, go have fun, get this stuff out of the way. I think for me, I don't like dealing with paperwork would be my hang up, you know, like not because I was like, would it bother me to do this and think about my mortality? And the reason it wouldn't bother me that way is because if I died tomorrow, I know I've lived each day to its fullest. I'm doing what I want to do, when I want to do, who I want to do it with. I mean, granted, there's been, you know, there's a little bit of obstacles and stuff, but when it comes down to it, I go where I want to go and do what I want to do. And that's, you know, not the agony of regret. So I just had to call that out.
No, what a great way to close up the conversation, Bobbie, you know, and it reminds me because I said it to a family member recently who, you know, basically put on hold a trip because of gas prices. And, you know, I was very blunt and straightforward with them. And I said, you know, there's a good chance that things will get worse before they get better. And, you know, gas prices could continue to increase. The question you have to ask yourself is, am I going to stop living my life? Am I going to let fear, gas prices, economic duress dictate to me? Because I think for so many people, you know, and sadly we've seen it over the, you know, recent couple of years here, Bobbie, and the reason that suicide rates are up and the mental trauma and stress when people go into survival mode and they stop living their lives, you know, for whatever reason, out of fear of whatever you think it is or isn't, doesn't matter at the end of the day. And it's something that personally I had determined many years ago, and many years before things unraveled, you know, having an idea that things would unravel at this degree, I said, no matter what, Caleb, you are not going to stop living your life. You're not going to stop, you know, making the most out of it. So I just love that you said that, Bobbie, because there is that balance. And right, you know, we understand, Bobbie, and I understand there's, you know, there's limitations, but you know, the correlation between the limitations in your checkbook and in your mind, you know, are really the things that you have to overcome first. Because if I could give you the list of family members, Bobbie, who I know right now are going to have deathbed regrets, it's pretty big. And, you know, it's again, because they've expressed, or I've heard them say the things that they want to be doing, that they wish they had been doing. I wish I had taken this trip. And every year they say it, and every year they don't do anything about it. But I also realize, right, that that's an individual battle, and that's a choice that each and every one of us makes. And I'm glad that you and I have decided we're not going to live our lives like that, Bobbie.
You know, I don't know if I told you this when I was down in Florida, if I had met him or not already. Did I tell you about the four, that there was two couples? They had to be in their 80s. Had to be. I don't
think so.
Well, in the hotel, because it's a 10X event, pretty much everybody talks to everybody, right? Like, oh, are you 10X? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. So there's this table of, it started with one guy and a wife, and then the second couple. And they're just sitting there having wine. And I went over and I'm like, hey, are you guys 10X too? No, and they had accents, and we played the game about where I try to figure out where they're from. And of course, they're from South Africa, which was really interesting. And I was mad at myself for not guessing because I was taking William's class and I was like, I should recognize the South African. But anyway, what they weren't 10X. What they were doing, and like I said, picture this, they're in their 80s. I got a cough real quick. They're like, no, we're here because we leave on a cruise out of Miami.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow.
really? So they had flown from South Africa through Dubai over to Miami, like 20 something hours worth of flights. They were going on a 16-day cruise that took them to Rome.
Wow.
And remember I said earlier in the show, I say congratulations to people. And I really genuinely congratulated them because I was like, good for you. I was like, you are not living through fear. You are just doing it. I was so excited because, you know, it's easy for us to talk in our 40s, maybe, but for these people who have legit fears and maybe the clock is running a little quicker than ours are, it was like, I was so proud of them. I was just so excited and so proud of them. And people just need to do that.
100%.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm done.
No, that's it. What a great story to finish up with, Bobbie. That's inspiring. And, you know, I hope we can, should we all be graced with, you know, life to live that long, that we do get to enjoy it. Cause I know for me, right, there's a lot of the world that I have yet to see, and, you know, things that I have yet to do. And, you know, recognizing and being aware that there are certain limitations, but not allowing those limitations to hold me back, or, you know, continue to move forward so that ultimately I can shatter those limitations and, you know, have everything that I want out of life for me, for my family, and for, you know, the people that want that for themselves too. So thanks for taking this time today with me,
I,
Bobbie. It's been really rich.
I got one more thing, Caleb.
You bet.
You just keep triggering thoughts. I'm
All
sorry.
good.
So if I had to declare myself a religion, I would have said atheist the first 40 years of my life. Okay. So I don't know much about it, any of that. But now on my journey, recovery and entrepreneurship, I found spirituality in whatever form that looks like. And I'm throwing this out there because I would invite people who do have a relationship with their gods, whoever their gods are, right? Or faith in any concept. Would their God want them to not live their lives? Or is their faith strong enough to believe that if they do take a cruise now, just only 2 years out of COVID, that their God would keep them safe, or their God would take them, or their God would do whatever their God, like, is the faith strong enough to believe that their God wants them to live holy, and that their time is their time, whether they're hibernating in their little house or they're taking the $5 a gallon road trip? You know what I mean? Yep. And coming from the place of no faith for so long, I don't understand how people choose when to have faith. Like, it's almost at their convenience. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be offensive, but it's a different way to think of it, right? Your God's going to take you when your God's going to take you. Isn't that what God believing people think?
I think it's a great point, Bobbie, that, you know, for a lot of people, faith is convenient, or, you know, people don't bother to pray until they're in dire straits or in a desperate situation. Right. And I guess for me, you know, all religion aside, faith is just foundational. I think an elemental into, you know, the human DNA. And we need to have great faith in ourselves. I mean, you know, how can we really have faith in anything or anyone else if we don't, you know, believe in ourselves? And I think it's just a great point that you bring up there. You know, are we living consistently from that place? Because I know for me, and probably future co-authored book with my wife and I coming soon on this, but, you know, the amount of hypocrisy that I witnessed growing up a preacher's kid, and then in all my years of, you know, quote unquote full-time ministry, whatever you want to call it, was, you know, just astronomical. And again, another thing that I had determined early on in my life is that, you know, if I'm going to go around teaching or preaching anything, I want to be living it to the best of my ability, as imperfect, you know, a person as I am. I do not want to be a hypocrite. And so, you know, a lot of things that I don't necessarily talk about, teach about, preach about anymore is right. I've had my own faith transformation going on, right? And so I don't know. For me, Bobbie, I don't get the concept of someone trying to teach or preach anything that they don't wholeheartedly believe in, that they don't live, that they don't have conviction. I mean, the things that I talk about, you know, this for you, you understand this goes without saying, right? I have conviction about it. I'm
Yeah, you do.
passionate about it. I'm not going to waste my time on topics that are mundane to me or that are not empowering or bettering humanity. I refuse to do that. To me, it's an irresponsible waste of time. And I'm somebody who's we all could be doing more, right? Trying harder. Um, but I've squandered time. I know what it feels like to squander time. I still have to, you know, battle squandering time. Again, this goes back to the beginning, right? The responsibility of entrepreneurship. You know, even when we don't feel like it, even when it's not convenient, you know, are we being responsible with our time? Because that, to me, is the most precious commodity that we've been given, and it's the most limited one. And like once it's gone, it's gone. Like it's over. Like there's no do-over in my opinion, right? I mean, this is it. You've got one life, you got one opportunity to make the most of it. Like, so, you know, get on my face and ask for forgiveness for whatever, but that was yesterday's news, right? Today's a brand new day. Like,
Yeah.
like you and I we've got conflicting schedules and stuff going on, but we're making it happen, aren't we?
We
Like
sure
last
are.
minute, we made this amazing conversation happen, which to me is just full of edifying richness and information for people to take and run with it. But you've said it, Bobbie, more than anything, what we want you guys to get out of today is that this is the opportune moment right now. You know, forget about yesterday. I didn't do it yesterday. I regret not. Forget about it. It's gone. Just do it now. Take the steps today. Start living. Start giving. Start serving. Start showing up more. Like I love that about entrepreneurship, Bobbie. Right? It's never too late. You're never too old to make it happen. And I always quote Napoleon Hill's, you know, author of Think and Grow Rich, in his writings. You know, he said in all of his years of studying successful people and different individuals, he said that I found that most people did some of their greatest work between the ages of 40 plus and 60 over. So in my opinion, where we're at, Bobbie, we're in the ripeness of the beginning of our journey in our ability to, you know, then we could go on and on about people who didn't find their stride or success until their 50s or 60s or 70s. So I'll say this, and then you're going to say goodbye and close this out, Bobbie. Everything that you need to be successful, happy, and ultimately an overcomer in this life is already resident within you.
Love it. Couldn't agree more. Caleb, thanks again. This has been wonderful. And we'll figure out how to do it again next week, guys. We just will. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Ciao, Bobbie.
Bye, Caleb.